What to the Christian is the 4th of July? We approach the 250th anniversary of American independence, not only as grateful Americans, but here in this space, in the cooling sparks and shadow of the holiday, we reflect as Christians. The Declaration of Independence holds the self-evident truths from which our independence is deduced. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men was the plural term in the day, are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. The Declaration ends with a mutual pledge to one another of our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. As Christians, we too come into this space to give our lives, share a fate, and risk our reputations. On July 5th, 1852, Frederick Douglass gave a keynote address at Independence Day celebration, July 5th. And he asked, what to the slave is the 4th of July? This 4th of July is yours, not mine, he said. You may rejoice. I must mourn. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base pretense, and your Christianity as a lie. Here in this space, in the cooling sparks and shadow of our holiday, we hold in our hands a dread legacy. Our faith affirmed God-given liberty and dignity for all, and then defended it only for some. We Christians, we American Christians, are as likely to defend freedom as we are to betray it. Earlier this morning, I went to the altar and asked and gave thanks for those who have defended the liberties of this country and for those who make it worth the defense. I thank God for the ideals of our founders and for the prophets that held us to them. And asked God, what's the American Christian is the 4th of July? The 4th of July is a day of celebration. The Protestant Episcopal Church in the United States of America, our official title, holds Independence Day as a feast day, praise for all those in authority, for the nation, for the country, for the armed forces, and for sound government. And we have patriotic songs in our hymnal. The Sea to Shining Sea of America the Beautiful, which incidentally should be our national anthem, O Beautiful for Spacious Skies in our hymnal, recalls the words of Zechariah today. His dominion shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. We Americans rejoice on this 250th anniversary in Zechariah's words, as prisoners of hope. We are creatures of expectation, freedom, opportunity, second chances. And we celebrate all the ways in which those hopes were answered, and the land that gave us them. My favorite founder, however, is an Englishman, Thomas Paine, who went beyond what founders and preachers of his day were willing to say, and attacked monarchy itself as, among other things, contrary to Scripture. He called slavery an execrable commerce and an outrage against humanity and justice. His common sense would galvanize the American colonies more than the Declaration of Independence to pursue that goal. Finally, in his Rights of Man, he said, when it shall be said in any country in the world, my poor are happy, Neither ignorance nor distress is to be found among them. My jails are empty of prisoners, my streets of beggars. The aged are not in want, the taxes are not oppressive. The rational world is my friend, because I am the friend of its happiness. When these things can be said, then may that country boast its constitution and its government. That's what we're hoping for. It can be said in our country that these things are possible and that these things are real. My family has a 4th of July tradition. We do sparklers outside and then the Capitol 4th indoors. Years ago, avoiding crowds, Allison and I put lawn chairs in the living room. We don't put lawn chairs in the living room anymore, but we keep the rhythm. We turned on the television last night and couldn't find it. The Capitol 4th had been moved to July 3rd with fireworks from Mount Vernon to make way for Freedom 250. Fair enough. But celebrations in the Capitol, as important as they were this year, seemed muted, confused, marred by heat and storms, as if something in us wasn't prepared to celebrate in the usual way. The usual cheese of patriotic hymnody, country, and pop fell flat. Why is Boys II Men singing Country Roads? This doesn't make sense. I guess because it could have been weird singing End of the Road. It was as if we understood. What to the American Christian is the 4th of July? It can be a day of mourning. You may rejoice, I must mourn, said Frederick Douglass. The Episcopal Church prays for social justice and those who suffer for the sake of conscience. We take vows to seek and serve in all Christ and all persons, to strive for peace and justice, because in this country we have to. And so in our hymnal, both the Star-Spangled Banner and Lift Every Voice and Sing appear, wrestling with the truths of our heritage. I do not understand my own actions, St. Paul tells the community in Rome. I don't do what I want. I do the very thing I hate. Sin dwells within me. I can will what is right, but I cannot do it. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want. It is no longer I that do it, but sin that dwells within me. I do not understand my own actions, said Paul. I love my country, but I do not understand it. Something else has a hold on us. Many Episcopalians have a problem with the doctrine of original sin. We just can't abide the idea that someone eating food from the wrong tree could have consequences for us today. It's a shameful myth. But me being a former Roman Catholic, it's just kind of there. Sorry. But keep to the idea it's a myth. It's not hard to imagine that violating God's laws can have deep, enduring consequences for humanity. Generations past the original violations. Consequences so enduring, it appears that relief can only be provided supernaturally. There is such a thing as original sin. Slaves were property in this country, which means human beings were treated like any other commodity, which means you could tie them to a church, just like cash or tobacco. There is evidence that those slaves sold to churches were treated even more poorly than others, because like any other collectively owned church building that defers maintenance forever, these slaves had no single owner. They didn't even have someone's selfish financial incentive to protect them. Hear that again. Churches treated their slaves more poorly than other owners. The first 4 bishops of the Diocese of Virginia all owned slaves. 82% of the clergy within the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia in 1860 were slaveholders. Churches were encouraged to purchase slaves in order to attract talented clergy with the promise of a rectory that came with servants. My seminary, Virginia Theological Seminary, was founded in 1823 by several slaveholders, including Francis Scott Key, who wrote the national anthem and opposed emancipation so much he criminally prosecuted abolitionist journalists as the United States District Attorney in the district. Aspinwall Hall on campus was built in 1841. Mount Vernon, where we shot off fireworks on July 3rd, rented slaves to work at the seminary in the 1850s. There were slave quarters on a campus that wouldn't admit black students for another 100 years. Your Christianity is a lie, said Douglas. It is no longer I that do it, said Paul, but the sin that dwells within me. Violating God's laws can have deep and enduring consequences for humanity, generations past the original violations. Consequences so enduring that it appears relief can only be provided supernaturally. That's why BTS is paying reparations to descendants. The need is undeniable, written in the archives of our institutions and inscribed on the backs of the enslaved. We are drenched in original sin, not just as Americans, not just as Christians, but as Episcopalians. So contaminated, what can the 4th of July possibly be to the American Christian? The 4th of July could be both celebration and mourning. It could be the day of our reconciliation. We can hold the light and shadow of our heritage together. The Episcopal Church has, if you don't know, reconciliation of a penitent. It's page 447 in the prayer book. Take a look. It's what former Roman Catholics like me call confession or penance. Don't actually look it up. 447. Look it up later. As a former Roman Catholic, I was taught that reconciliation has 4 parts, movements, if you will. Contrition, confession, absolution, satisfaction. Contrition, confession, absolution, satisfaction. You can see all of these movements in our rite when you look at it later. You're sorry. You admit in truth all that you've done. You are absolved and you forgive as you've been forgiven. And then there may be penance. Something you have to do to make things right. It isn't 5 Our Fathers and 10 Hail Marys, though that it might be. It's word. Satisfaction. This is how the church deals with sin. Original or otherwise, individual or collective. These movements are the model for the ministry of reconciliation given to us by the one who reconciled us to God. This is how you deal with sin. You mourn and lament. You confront the truth. You accept and extend forgiveness. And then you get to the work of love ahead. In 1961, civil rights activist and future U.S. Congressman John Lewis was brutally beaten at the Rock Hill Greyhound bus terminal. He was one of the Freedom Riders traveling to New Orleans to challenge segregation in interstate travel. Nearly 5 decades later, in 2008, Lewis returned to Rock Hill and reconciled with the man who had attacked him. He later said, "I saw those men as victims of the same system of segregation and hatred." You mourn and lament, you confront the truth, you accept and extend forgiveness, and then you get to the work ahead. As that activist and future U.S. Congressman would tell those who beat him, "Thank you for your service. You beat me, you arrest me, you take me to jail, you almost killed me, but in spite of that, I'm still going to love you." We mourn, we lament, we confront the truth, accept and extend forgiveness, and get to the work of love ahead. That's how you hold light and shadow at the same time. That's how you hold light that overcomes darkness. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I am gentle and humble in heart. You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." The 4th of July may yet be a day of reconciliation. We wear the yoke of our history, but we learn and we forgive, and that yoke is easier, the burden lighter in Jesus Christ. We can hope and confront evil and repair amidst the fireworks. Here in this space, in the cooling sparks and shadow of our holiday, this is our Sabbath. And we that are weary and heavy laden can rest, celebrating and mourning, soon reconciled and always beloved.